More exists among human beings than can be answered by the simplistic question I'm hit with every day of my life. Are you a man or a woman? You're more than just neither, honey. There's other ways to be than either or. It's not so simple. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many people who don't fit.
Strangers stare and they wanna be the first to ask for my life in one word. But it's not that simple. Why do you care to know? Am I a boy or a girl? Well, I don't care about the answers. The questions were boring. Please tell me a story. Like, what did your mom say? And what is your real name? How about those drugs that you take? And does your voice change? How come you don't feel ashamed? What kind of love do you make? Well, you don't care about my answers. Your questions ignore me. Let me tell you a story. Mom's my best friend, and this is who I am. All of it adds up to keep me sane. Yes, I've dropped octaves, cause I am a mountain range, and any kind of love's good enough to be made. But I don't care about the answers. The questions were boring. Please tell me a story.
Good morning. My name is Karma, and I am honored to be the minister of the Unitarian Universalists of Central Delaware, and to welcome you this morning to our worship service. We want you to know that you are welcome, and all of who you are is welcome in this place, and that our experience of this day and this sacred time of connection is better because you're here. We are, as always, grateful for the technology that allows us to gather virtually, and we affirm and celebrate that we remain a connected, vibrant spiritual community, even when we cannot gather in our home sanctuary at Congregation Beth Shalom. Very briefly, let us remember that technology is amazing, as we know when it works, and during this time of online worship, we continue to learn together. Thank you for your patience as we tend to the technological issues behind the scenes, and as we deal with anything unexpected that may come up. Your microphones will be muted, as they are now, for the majority of our time together, just to cut down on background noises. When there's time for community sharing later, we'll invite you to unmute yourself using the mute, unmute toggle button in the bottom left-hand corner of your Zoom screen. And we'd like to invite you to stay after we've concluded the service for a virtual coffee hour. We'll go into small groups, and you can use voice and video to spend some time in conversations. Following our small group chats during coffee hour today, we want to invite you back into this larger Zoom room for a time of Q&A with our special guest speaker today. And I want to take a moment to introduce him now. The Reverend Miller Jen Hoffman is a good friend and trusted colleague of mine, and one of the smartest thinkers and theologians that I know. He is also one of the best preachers I know, and you'll find out why as you listen to him give the reflection later today. His official bio, so that you know a little bit more about him, reads as follows. White, queer, and genderqueer, Reverend Miller Jen Hoffman was ordained by Metropolitan Community Churches in New York City. Hoffman's thesis, Every Woman Who Will Make Herself Male, Genderqueer Expression in the Early Church, was deposited in the Burke Library at Union Theological Seminary in 2004 and earned the Roswell Dwight Hitchcock Prize in Church History. He has worked for LGBT civil rights with Lambda Legal Defense, for anti-violence justice and meditative practice at the Brooklyn-based Center for Anti-Violence Education, as a counselor and advocate for domestic violence and rape survivors with organizations in New York and Pennsylvania, and as a mentor to local queer and trans youth in New York and Pennsylvania, and as the pastor of MCC congregations in Binghamton, New York, and Boyds, Maryland. Hoffman is currently supporting sexual assault centers statewide at the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Rape. Mind, body, spirit connections to social justice and the connectedness of physical, emotional, and spiritual violence deeply influence his thinking and ministry. And his writing explores the places where personal action meets and impacts social change. Miller, thank you so much for being with us this morning and for sharing with us your wisdom and experience. We hope that you'll feel as radically welcomed as is possible in this virtual environment. I do have one announcement that I want to highlight today, and that is that UUCD is partnering with Mount Zion AME Church just down the street from us in Dover when we gather in person for a series of conversations in July. Every Monday night in July from 6:30 to 8 p.m., we'll join together via Zoom, both of our congregations, and we've also asked a number of other congregations in the Dover area to join us. Our hope is that we can create a multi-faith, multiracial movement towards racial justice and reconciliation in Dover. More information will be forthcoming, including the link where you can register to participate in these conversations. Each of them will consist of a panel presentation on the topic each week, followed by small group conversations with folks from all of the participating groups. I would like to invite you to consider prioritizing this as one concrete thing we can all do to engage this issue and work for change together. Announcements over. Let's all take a deep breath in our own environments, and let me welcome you again to this time of worship. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you've been, whatever you've done, whatever your religious beliefs are or aren't, and wherever you physically are on the planet right now, you are welcome in this spiritual community. However you move in this world, how much or how little is in your bank account or wallet, however you are feeling in this moment, you and all of who you are welcome in this spiritual community. We are all enhanced by being together.
We light this chalice today to celebrate the inherent worth and dignity of every person, particularly of the people among us who expand our binary thinking, those who cannot tick just one box or another, those who prefer instead to choose neither, all of the above, or to define things for themselves. The chalice reminds us of the flame of truth that is greater than our individual understandings. The warmth of the community in which we covenant to stay and work together and grow together until all belong, even when that's difficult. And the fire of our commitment to transform the world into a place where all people can find home and belonging.
For our opening song today, we're going to sing together, and I'm inviting you to sing loudly in your own environment, whether you be indoors or out. We're going to sing a song from the Teal hymnal that we use when we gather together. That's one of my favorites. It's a song called Return Again. It's meditative, it's a round. It was written by Shlomo Karlebach as part of Jewish renewal music. And the way that I could think of to lead us in this song as a round was to record myself singing all the parts. So that's what we're going to watch now. And I, again, invite you to sing them. I'll sing the first part of the round first, the second part of the round second, and then they'll all come together, and just join in as you like as we sing this opening song.
Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again.
Please join with me together, and good morning, everyone, with our unison affirmation, which I've copied into the chat box. Together, love is the spirit of this church and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
For our story for all ages today, we have a book, a kid's book called Peanut Goes for the Gold, and it is written by Jonathan Van Ness, whom you might know as the grooming guy on Queer Eye, if you've watched that in the latest seasons, and it's illustrated by Jillian Reed. So we're going to just watch that. If you've got kids, bring them near, and stay tuned.
Hi everyone, I hope you had a restful spring break and you're ready for our remote learning days. Today I'm going to read you one of my favorite new books, Peanut Goes for the Gold, written by Jonathan Van Ness, pictures by Jillian Reed. Peanut Goes for the Gold. Peanut has their own way of doing things. Peanut loves doing cartwheels while on the basketball court and having banana pancakes on their birthday instead of cake and cutting their own hair as they hula hoop. Wow, Peanut, that's kind of hard. Sometimes people think Peanut's weird, but more often, friends wind up joining in the fun. When Peanut decides to do something, there's just no stopping them. I'm going to be a rhythmic gymnast. And here's what my routine's going to look like. Dad, I need you to help me with my outfit. Mom, I need you to help me with my choreography. And Sammy Man, you need to pick out my music and make it funky. Check out Sammy's nose. It's shaped like a heart. How cute. Peanut practice their routine night and day. Peanut practice at home. They practice at school. They practice on the bus from home to school. And when the day for the big competition came, Peanut was sure the routine was perfect. Over here it says National Junior Gymnastics Championships. The music was all queued up, and Peanut danced and spun and tumbled and dove. They swung the hoop and tossed the ball and juggled the batons and twirled the ribbon. Peanut's performance was flawless. Almost. Peanut only forgot one thing: to tie their shoes. Silly Peanut. But instead of ruining the act, Peanut turned that stumble into a triple axel tumble. You go, Peanut. And they totally stuck the landing. Peanut knew it was the perfect routine, and the judges couldn't help but agree. 10, 10, 10. Yep, Peanut just has their own way of doing things, even if they're still learning how to tie their shoes. The end.
In our UU moment each week, we strive to encourage a connection with our larger Unitarian Universalist fellowship by highlighting some aspect of UUA ministry or the work of another congregation. Today, we want to let you know that there is a specific ministry in the UUA called Trust. That's TR with two UUs in the middle, ST, which stands for Transgender Religious Professional UUs Together. This is an organization of trans Unitarian Universalists who are living out a call to ministry within Unitarian Universalism. Its mission is to advocate for the gifts, safety, liberation, and leadership of trans religious professionals in UU ministries and institutions. Trust was founded by Mr. Barb Grieve and Reverend Sean Dennison in 2004. Among other things, it has provided trainings in transgender identity to the denomination's credentialing bodies, assisted in the settlement of trans religious educators and ministers in UU congregations, and worked with the UUA in improving trans-related health insurance coverage and introducing gender-neutral bathrooms at the annual Unitarian Universalist General Assembly. though much more work is needed to create a genuine welcome of trans and non-binary people in Unitarian Universalist congregations, we are proud that we are making strides to center and amplify the voices of trans people as we live into our aspirations to be truly welcoming.
When we are physically together, we generally invite you to come forward and light a candle and share with us your joys or concerns. Today, we'll adapt this slightly and ask you to share very briefly what is most on your heart right now and light a candle in your own space. Through the action of sharing and kindling a flame, we give energy to our best thoughts, meditations, sympathies, celebrations, and prayers. We hold these as sacred in our collective hearts. At this time, we invite you to change your view to gallery view in the upper right corner of your screen so that you can see everyone who is here. As you feel led, please unmute your microphone and share your joy, concern, and light your candle if you have one.
A central part of our worship in person and online is the opportunity we all have to practice the art of generosity. Our gifts to UUCD are what allow this congregation to thrive in a common vision to nurture our spirits, build community, and change the world. We are grateful to you for the many ways you support our community, including your financial pledges and offerings. Your gifts truly translate into lives changed. Every part of our ministry, from the worship that grounds us in our values, to the community gatherings that connect us, to our children's education, to our social justice outreach and actions, are supported by your gifts. Today, we want to thank you specifically for the pledges you have given in this year's stewardship campaign, which allowed us to unanimously approve our budget for the coming fiscal year. Even in the midst of a global pandemic and the worst economic recession in decades, you have managed to increase the financial resources that we will put into living out our values in the coming year. Thank you from the Stewardship Committee, Jace, Wendy, and Sandy. For those who are making pledges or want to contribute to this community, you may continue to write checks and mail them to us, or you can give online. There are instructions to do both of these things on our website at uucd.org. Just click Support UUCD on the menu bar. You can do that now during this offertory or any time that's convenient.
Before we watch the offertory video, a few recent statistics might help us contextualize and get the most out of the message of this music. A 2018 study from the American Academy of Pediatrics found alarming numbers of trans and non-binary youth who attempt suicide. More than half of transgender male teens, 30% of trans females, and almost 42% of non-binary youth try to end their lives at least once. Additionally, an average of 2 trans people are violently murdered every month in the United States, and even more in some other countries. By far, the majority of those killed are trans women of color. The offering song today is sung by Shawnee, a Two-Spirit, Canadian Mohawk songstress. Proceeds from this song, Warrior Heart, are used exclusively to support the We Matter campaign, an effort to end the Aboriginal youth suicide and to empower Indigenous youth. The chorus urges, "Stay and show us what you're made of."
Young blood, are you alright? I know that cry, oh, your wicked scars that break your heart, broken down and beat and tied.
As we further center ourselves in this time of worship, we invite you to settle into your bodies. Breathe. Notice the rise and fall of your own chest as you inhale and exhale. Breathe again and notice the space between the inhale and the exhale. Keep breathing and listen to these words from Dorothy Allison. There will be space between each of these 3 brief statements to let you think about what they may mean for you. Do you agree? Can you relate? How do these statements match or not your own experience of being in the world? Dorothy says, 2 or 3 things I know for sure, and one of them is just this. If we cannot name our own, we are cut off at the root. She also says, 2 or 3 things I know for sure. The one is that I would rather go naked than wear the coat of the world has made for me. She also says, 2 or 3 things I know for sure, and one of them is that change, when it comes, cracks everything open. Breathe again, intentionally and deeply, and pay attention. Are there 2 or 3 things you know for sure about your own experience of living in this world? What are they? Let us find our center in these self-named, self-defined truths. These things we know.
By creating a new mythos that is change in the way we perceive reality, the way we see ourselves, and the ways we behave, Lama Mestiza creates a new consciousness. The work of Mestiza consciousness is to break down the subject-object duality that keeps her prisoner and to show in the flesh and through the images in her work how duality is transcended. The answer to the problem between the white race and the colored, between males and females, lies in healing the split that originates in the very foundation of our lives, our culture, our languages, and our thoughts. A massive uprooting of dualistic thinking in the individual and collective consciousness is the beginning of a long struggle, but one that could, in our best hopes, bring us the end of rape, of violence, and of war.
There are 56 genders. There are 24 genders. There are 32 genders. There are 6 genders. There are 18 genders. We don't know how many genders there are. We are obsessed with how many genders there are. We are always getting upset about how many genders there are. We may not know why we care about how many genders there are. When I was an undergrad ages ago, the biology teacher said there was XX, XY, XO, XXY, XYY. I can rattle off from memory 5 different chromosome combinations, and that was in the 80s. Even then, there weren't 2. Even in the 60s, it seems that folks knew this. And even so, these are treated by so many people as variations on a binary. I don't know why. Maybe we do know why. Early in June, J.K. Rowling, it feels like this was already ages ago, so much wonderful and terrible stuff has happened this month. She stubbornly insisted again, she did this already last December, she insisted that something called sex is essential and equivalent to something called gender. I'm okay if you care, maybe you don't. I'm okay with biology. Each of us has genital configurations and fat distribution and balding patterns and body hair patterns and chest shapes and hip shapes and genital glands and voice pitch and hormones. Everyone has all of them. And larynxes and height. Yes, we all have height. I'm cool with us having those things. The thing that's weird and violent, though, is insisting that those things mean we're either F or M, no matter how we feel about it, no matter what our many other biological realities are. Do you think that gender identity is just in our head? Do you think that what's in our head is not part of our biology? I think what's weird and violent is knowing that there are at least 5 of a thing that I can rattle off 33 years later from memory, but pretending that there is only either M or F, or else only monster and myth. We all have one of a variety of blood types, A, B, AB, O, plus or negative. We all have eyesight, a maybe infinite number, maybe not infinite. I don't really know a ton about it, but 20/20, 20/30, 30/20, 20/100, whatever. We all have eye color, ambers, browns, blacks, blues, grays, greens, hazels, reds, violets. Hair color, browns, blacks, blondes, auburns, reds, grays, whites. I could go on like this for pages, but Karma says I am absolutely not allowed to talk longer than 15 minutes under any circumstances. I'm fine with us having biology. It would be very strange and kind of ignorant not to. Of course we have bodies. Of course we have biological differences. You can call them what you want, of course. You don't need me to tell you that, but I don't call them sex differences because I want it to be very clear that gender is not biological in any way. If I want to distinguish them from blood type, eyesight, eye and hair color, allergies, neurological statuses, then I call them genitals. I call them breasts, hips, hair and balding patterns, and so on. I call sex the thing that we do in bed or on the kitchen floor or wherever. Of course, we have biology and biological difference, but recognize that we don't use any other biological reality to box people into gender. We don't use any other biological difference to box people into gender. There's so much overlap across gender of all these things. You already know this, but sometimes we let hegemony, also known as the status quo by force, also known as the deputizer of oppression, by which we oppress ourselves and one another and act as though it was our own idea. Sometimes we let hegemony or cultural norms and expectations convince us that we don't know what we know. There is so much overlap of height, strength, voice pitch across people, across gender, so much overlap of fat distribution and hip width and hair patterns and chest shapes across people, across gender, so much overlap of hormones, even chromosomes. Almost nobody knows their hormone ratios. Almost no one knows their chromosome makeup. Most of the time, you have to be an exceptionally gifted athletic woman before you are coerced to know your chromosomes and hormone proportions and compelled to become not woman. It would be laughable if it wasn't so brutal. Everyone must be one of two, except you. Biology is not destiny, except her. It's not just Caster Semenya, an exceptionally gifted middle distance runner in the women's 800 meters with an atypical chromosome combination and hormone ratio. It's not only her, Caster, that is harmed by biological gender determinism. What got Rawling riled up was an article about the additional risk to some people already marginalized by gender during COVID stay at home, with its consequent reduced privacy and reduced availability of needed products to manage menstruation. As an aside, the article several times referred to girls, to women, as well as non-binary people, referred to girls and women, as well as to all people who menstruate. The article, in addition to addressing a critical global health byproduct of the pandemic, was also recognizing the number of people who need menstrual products who are not women or girls, though women and girls were also named several times, which makes me think that Rawling didn't read the article and only reacted to the headline. Let this be a lesson to us all. First lesson, don't be a transphobic biological essentialist jerk. Second lesson, read the article. Rawling, if you don't know, hollered on Twitter that people who menstruate should simply be called women. First, she said, because that's who menstruates. And later, she said, because that shared identity, womanhood, is a critical center of affinity and a powerful locus of creative change, which it is. But the Buddha didn't say, don't confuse the moon with the finger pointing at the moon for nothing. Womanhood is a critical center of affinity and a powerful locus of creating change because of the shared experiences of marginalization, dismissal, violence, and disenfranchisement, among other things. But feminism largely acted and still acts largely as though the experiences of white, non-trans, middle-class women are the defining experiences of womanhood. And so Black, Latina, and Asian experiences, trans women's experiences, working class and working poor and poor women's experiences, deaf and disabled women's experiences, and a host of women's experiences of marginalization, dismissal, violence, and disenfranchisement, among other things, are left unaddressed or ignored. Imagine if we quit building and policing walls on top of arbitrary political boundaries and instead read the article and acted on it. Instead, built inclusive and sustainable water, sanitation, and hygiene services. Instead, built and funded schools, health clinics, and community-based programming. Instead, increased access to menstrual materials and all other materials to increase school and work attendance and all activities of daily living. Instead, dismantled menstruation stigma, both stigma against those who do and stigma against those who do not menstruate, if you take my meaning. Trans women, yes, and non-trans women who are menopausal, non-trans women who are of bleeding age, and yet who do not bleed for many reasons. It seems so foolish to me, so very foolish, to equate girlhood or womanness with something like menstruation or childbirth or breastfeeding or breasts, when so many non-trans girls and women agonize over and doubt their girl and womanhood when they don't menstruate, are unable to conceive, have breasts removed during cancer and other treatment, or simply age out of these markers. How foolish and how evil, yes, perhaps evil if there is such a thing, to claim to equate girlhood or womanness with something like childbirth, and then ignore the childbirth mortality rates of Blacks, American Indians, and Alaska Natives 2 to 3 times higher than those of whites during childbirth. Most pregnancy-related deaths are preventable. Racial and ethnic disparities in pregnancy-related deaths have persisted over time. Preventable and persistently 2 to 3 times higher than those of whites during childbirth. What is a critical center of affinity worth? How valuable is the creative change if so many trans and non-trans women continue to die without your interest or attention? The trans women, mostly trans women of color, who are murdered at horrifying numbers globally each year, more, dying in part because of our insistence that sex is essential, unchangeable, and biological, but only in the narrowly defined biology of our choosing. And the non-trans women, women who pass your biological standard, dying in preventable ways at 2 or 3 times the rates of people who look like you. Your center of affinity is exposed. Your lofty concern for creative change is showing its raggedy edges. I say your and mean one's, of course. I say your and mean our, of course. I say your and mean your, you. You are the only one who really knows which meaning works best. We don't know how many genders there are. We are obsessed with how many genders there are. We are always getting upset about how many genders there are. Let's stop. Here are my rudimentary recommendations. 1, reject all binaries. 2, reject all generalizations. 3, accept that we do not get to decide who other people are. 4, accept that our determinations about who other people are usually do harm to them, usually real, psychological, and physical harm. 5, don't use other people who are different as your textbooks. Go find stuff online or on TV or in the library or movies or other public resources. Do not ask human beings to educate you about their difference. There are no exceptions to this. There are exceptions to this. But until you are an expert at the exceptions, act as if there are no exceptions. Learn new stuff about stuff that's different than you, stuff that you don't like, stuff that you don't know yet that you like, stuff that you disagree with, stuff that isn't about you and doesn't center you and maybe doesn't portray you favorably. Seek this stuff out, not from other people who are different from you. Look for it the way you look for things that are deeply satisfying and rewarding. Keep doing it. 7, resist the urge to evaluate and review those things. Try not to announce, I like this. Try not to tell others, I do not like this. Try to engage, read, watch, listen, and not have it be about you and what you think about it. 8, try not to argue with it. Try very, very hard not to defend yourself. Try to listen, especially when it says or does something disagreeable or even unfair. 9, learn the difference between what you meant and how it was perceived. Eventually, and as soon as possible, learn that but what you meant is perfectly irrelevant. See number 8. 10, don't stop thinking. Don't stop using your critical skills, but critically use those thinking and critical skills on yourself. Use your imagination on behalf of the other person who is different from you. If you feel uncomfortable or attacked, ask, for example, what it is specifically that is making you feel that way. Ask yourself, why do you feel uncomfortable or attacked by it? Think about under what circumstances might you rightly and honorably say or do this objectionable thing to someone else? Think about under what circumstances might the other person who is different from you rightly and honorably say or do this thing to someone else who is like you? If you feel disgusted or put off by something or find it unpleasant, ask yourself why. Wonder with yourself about what has shaped your aesthetic. What told you whether things were pleasant and beautiful or not? And might that be a matter of taste? And might your taste have room for more things? Watch and listen and read so much that you start to be able to tell for yourself what is stereotype, exaggeration, falsehood, what is awful and true, because this group is various like all groups. And start again from the top. Reject all binaries, reject all generalizations, accept that we do not get to decide who other people are, accept that our determinations about who other people are usually do harm to them, usually real psychological and physical harm. We don't know how many genders there are. We are obsessed with how many genders there are. We are always getting upset about how many genders there are. Let's stop. Let's start. Let's learn not to care. Let's learn to care. Let's expand our centers of affinity. Let's work for the kinds of creative change that affects the most marginalized first, the most harmed, the most immediately. Let's let ourselves, if we have more now, let ourselves be the ones to receive the trickle-down benefits. And do it all with race and ethnicity, with body size, with deafness and disability, with class and education, with all the differences we fear and disdain until we're done. There isn't time to focus on only one at a time. And none of us is only one kind of difference. Trans and non-binary people are not only our gender. We need to act now with the desperation of those who defend the status quo. Let's start. Let's not stop until we're done. Peace.
Our closing song today is the song Standing on the Side of Love, which many of you know. It's also from the Teal hymnal. And so let's sing that loudly on our own environment as we bring our worship to a close.
The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are standing on the side of love, hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith we dare to proclaim we are standing on the side of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are standing on the side of love, hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith we
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Our virtual worship has ended, but our connections to one another and the earth endure. Go blessed to be a blessing for others.